Olena moved through the city like a shadow slipping along brick and water, her footsteps muffled by the damp earth and the distant rumble of vehicles above head. The sky had been a bruised purple since dusk, bleeding slowly into night. But beneath, the surface, the arteries of Kiev pulsed with secrets and silent plans. Her mission was etched into every muscle and thought. For weeks she had traced the veins of the sewer system threading beneath the sprawling Borispil airport, a place where war and peace collided beneath the hum of fluorescent lights and the roar of jets landing and taking off. Every detail mattered. The cold bite of the concrete walls, the echo of dripping water, the faintest shift in air currents that could betray a hidden trap or a careless guard. Olena had learned to read the silence like a book, every drip, every breath, every scrape, whispered warnings if only one had the ears to listen. Her partner Sasha waited above with the team spread out like ghosts between. The cracked walls of the old cargo terminal radios were silent. No signals, no chance for rescue if things went south. The plan was simple, but the risks were anything but. She had to slip beneath the fortress, invisible and unseen, and emerge at the heart of enemy command. She pushed forward, pulling her jacket tight as the air grew colder and dampness clung to her skin. The smell of decay and diesel mixed in the claustrophobic tunnel. The faint glow of her flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating rusty pipes and graffiti from forgotten days. Names, dates, messages from those who had come before. And somewhere in this labyrinth, a fate was waiting. A man whose capture could change the course of the war if only she could find him. Before the alarm screamed into the night, her heart beat steady despite the adrenaline sharp like the edge of a blade. Each step was measured precise, calculated breaths in and out. She paused at a junction where the sewer split into 3 directions. The map burned in her mind, a blueprint of danger and hope. She traced her finger on the cold, damp wall, as if willing the way to reveal itself. Then a sudden noise, a single boot step reverberated far ahead. Her breath caught. She froze every sense, alert. It was not the steady march of a patrol, not the shuffle of a tired soldier, but a deliberate sound, the heavy tread of a man moving with purpose and confidence. Olena pressed herself against the wall, the concrete cold against her cheek. A beam of her flashlight flickered, catching a flash of polished boots and the glint of metals on a jacket she did not recognize at once. Her mind raced. Who could this be? She had studied the lists, memorized the faces and ranks, but this man was a ghost, an unknown variable, a wild card that threatened to unravel everything. Slowly, carefully, she moved parallel to the corridor, her eyes fixed on the figure advancing. He carried no weapon visible, but the way he held himself spoke of power and command. Her pulse quickened. She needed to warn Sasha, but words were useless here. The radios were dead. Silence. And if she made a sound, it would be the last she ever made. The man stopped briefly peering into a grate, then disappeared into a side tunnel that led further into the maze beneath the airport. Olena waited a heartbeat longer before following her prey deeper into the bowels of the fortress. The air grew thicker, the walls narrower, and the echoes more fragmented. Her flashlight caught glimpses of discarded equipment crates and faded markings that told of past battles and quiet deaths. At the end of the tunnel, a heavy steel door stood locked, but not bolted. A faded symbol marked the entrance, the insignia of the enemy command post, a place she had only heard of in whispered rumors. This was the heart of the beast. The place where decisions were made and futures sealed. Olena took a deep breath and pulled a set of tools from her pack. The lock was old and rusted but sturdy. It groaned in protest as she worked her fingers nimble and practiced. The seconds stretched thin like threads pulled to breaking. Her ears caught distant voices faint, but growing closer. A patrol was moving near and she had no time left. The lock clicked open, and the door swung inward, revealing a dimly lit room stacked with maps, radios, and glowing screens. She slipped inside like a ghost, disappearing into shadows. The scent of cigarette smoke and stale coffee hung in the air, along with the sharp tang of tension. Her eyes searched the faces at the table, the men and women speaking in low voices, unaware of the predator in their midst. Then she saw him, the Russian general, the man who had led countless assaults, who had taken cities and crushed resistance. He sat at the center, commanding attention and respect, a lion. In a den of sheep, Olena's breath caught and her hands tightened around the grip of her suppressed pistol. This was the moment she had trained for, the mission that could turn the tide of the war. But as she stepped forward, a sudden noise behind her made her freeze. A shadow moved, and a figure emerged from the darkness, someone she recognized and did not trust. The general looked up, and their eyes met in a moment, stretched thin by possibility and danger. His voice broke the silence, speaking words that chilled her blood and bent the night itself into something far more treacherous than she had imagined. The voice that broke the silence was low, but carried a weight that seemed to press against the very walls of the hidden room. Olena's heart hammered in her chest as the general spoke words that cut sharper than any blade. "Your mission is compromised," came the cold statement from the man who had once been untouchable. He smiled, not with warmth, but with the cruel satisfaction of a predator that knew the trap had sprung. Olena's eyes flicked to the shadowed figure who had stepped into the dim light. It was Sergei, a man she had once trusted, a comrade who now stood, with the enemy, his face unreadable as stone. The realization was a thunderclap betrayal seeping into her bones like ice. Her grip tightened on the pistol, and she tensed, ready for the fight that she had hoped to avoid. The general rose slowly, his presence filling the room like a storm about to break. He spoke calmly, but every word dripped with menace and calculation. "You thought you could walk into our lair unnoticed, but we have been watching, waiting for the moment to turn your bravery into your undoing." Sergei stepped forward, his eyes locked on Olena, betraying nothing, yet promising everything that was about to come. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, cutting off any chance of escape. The room seemed to shrink the shadows, lengthening like claws reaching for her. She moved instinctively, drawing her pistol and firing. Once the shot ringing out was not meant to kill, but to disable the radio clipped to a nearby officer's belt. Silence fell heavy as the crackle of static was replaced by the stunned gasps of the enemy. In the brief chaos, Sasha's voice crackled through her earpiece. A ghostly thread of sound. The team was moving in close, but the time was running out. Olena's mind raced. She had to think fast. The capture of the general was no longer just about the mission, but survival. The general smirked, stepping back as guards flooded into the corridor just outside the door. His voice was low, but carried the threat of storms to come. "You may have caught me for now, but this city is a snake. Its venom will find you. No matter where you hide." Olena knew his words were not just bravado. They were a warning and a promise that the war was far from over. She felt the weight of the silence around her. The tension, thick enough to choke on every breath, was a gamble, every heartbeat a countdown. The mission was on a knife's edge, balanced between success and disaster. The general was cuffed and pulled toward the exit, but Olena's eyes never left Sergei, whose smile was a dark secret waiting to unravel them all. Outside the hidden room, the airport was waking to alarms and shouts. The team moved with deadly precision, blocking exits and covering their flanks. The air smelled of smoke and fear, and the distant roar of engines ready to carry them away from this trap. Olena's mind was a whirlwind of plans and contingencies. The sewer route was narrow and unforgiving, but it was the only way out, and she led the way with a steady hand and a fierce heart. Beneath the runway, The tunnels echoed with their hurried footsteps and whispered warnings. The general remained silent, shackled and dangerous as ever, but the true threat was the unknown that followed behind them. A coded message had been sent. A call to arms that could bring reinforcements faster than they anticipated. Olena's pistol was an extension of her will, every movement sharp and deliberate. As they reached the river dock, the boat waited hidden in the shadows, the only link to safety. The engine was silent, the captain's face grim and focused. It was a moment suspended between hope and dread. Then the radio hissed a voice, a word in a language none of them recognized, a signal that twisted the night into a new nightmare. The capture might have been the beginning, but now the real fight was just unfolding beneath the surface of a war that refused to end. The boat rocked gently against the riverbank as Olena and her team slipped aboard. The captain's face was a mask of quiet tension. The air was thick with the smell of fuel and damp wood as the engine coughed to life, and the vessel began to glide silently down the dark waterway. The general sat shackled in the corner, his eyes sharp but tired. His presence was a shadow that loomed over the cramped space, a reminder that the mission was far from over. Olena's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the night's chaos. The unexpected betrayal of Sergei, the mysterious coded message, the voice on the radio that had spoken a word so strange and ominous it had sent a shiver down her spine. The war was a living thing, shifting and twisting beneath the surface of every city street and shadowed alley, now it seemed. They had stirred something far larger than a mere military operation. As the boat slipped into the darkness, Olena signaled for the team to remain silent. The riverbanks were lined with abandoned docks and broken cranes, their silhouettes like skeletons, against the faint glow of the city. Beyond the river, the night seemed to pulse with life and danger, a heartbeat synchronized with their own fear and determination. The general's lips moved slowly as if weighing his words before he finally spoke. A voice low and measured. "I underestimated you, Olena. You captured me, but do you understand what you have unleashed?" The coded message was not just a call for reinforcements, it was a trigger. The war is spreading far beyond this city, beyond borders and alliances. Olena's eyes narrowed. She had trained for moments like this, for decisions that carved the future with ruthless precision, yet the words felt like a warning wrapped in a riddle, a puzzle she had to solve before the next trap snapped shut. The general smiled faintly, as if amused by her silence. "You will see soon enough the shadows you thought you controlled are deeper, darker, and older than you imagined." The boat's radio crackled again. The same strange word whispered in the static, as if the night itself was speaking in tongues. It was a signal she could not ignore, a call to arms that had already begun to summon forces from places long thought asleep. The river narrowed and the boat slowed its progress. The captain's eyes flicked toward the shore, as if sensing unseen watchers lurking just beyond the edge of the floodlights. Suddenly, a sharp explosion shattered the night, a plume of fire erupting from the dock behind them. The team tensed, weapons raised as another burst of gunfire cracked through the air. The mission was no longer just about escape. It was a battle for survival against enemies who knew every step they took. Olena barked orders, moving with the practiced grace of a soldier whose life depended on instinct and training. The boat surged forward, weaving between rusted pilings and submerged debris. The general remained silent, watching the chaos unfold with a cold, calculating gaze, as if already playing out the consequences in his mind. Ahead, the river opened into a wider channel, the city's skyline a jagged horizon of light and steel. But even in this relative safety, the sense of being hunted never left. The radio hissed again, the strange word repeated, as if the war itself was calling, from the depths beckoning them into a new and unknown darkness. The boat slowed near a hidden dock, a place known only to a few. The extraction team was waiting, shadows blending into the night with weapons ready. Their faces were grim but determined, a fragile hope in a world unraveling at the edges. The general was hauled off the boat, cuffed and silent, while Olena watched every movement, calculating the next step in a game where every piece could mean survival or death. But as they moved into the waiting vehicles, a sudden realization hit Olena like a blow. The betrayal was deeper than Sergei alone. The strange word, the coded message, and the rapid response of the enemy all pointed to a larger network, a shadow web that stretched through cities and governments that no single mission could unravel. Her calm crackled again. Sasha's voice, urgent and fragmented. "The base is compromised. We have to move now." The safe house was no longer safe, and the lines between friend and foe blurred into a shifting nightmare. Olena's thoughts raced as she climbed into the armored car, the city lights blurring past like the flicker of a dying flame. The night held its breath as the convoy sped through deserted streets. The general's capture was a victory, but the war was changing shape, a storm gathering on the horizon that threatened to swallow them all. The strange word repeated again in her mind, a key to a puzzle still unsolved. A warning whispered from the shadows. Olena knew this was only the beginning. The war beneath the war, a hidden conflict that would test every loyalty, every truth, and every courage she had left. The enemy was no longer just an army, but a force that lived in the spaces between light and dark, a predator, stalking the edges of reality, and somewhere in the night, a voice spoke again in that strange language. A promise and a threat intertwined as the city held its breath, waiting for the next move in a game where the stakes were everything. The city breathed in darkness and held its secrets close beneath a sky heavy with clouds and the distant glow of fires. Olena sat in the back of the armored vehicle, her eyes scanning the passing shadows and fragments of light that played across cracked pavement and shuttered windows. The weight of the captured general beside her was more than chains and cuffs. It was a burden of knowledge and danger that pressed down on the fragile hope they carried through the night. The safe house was a fortress buried in the heart of a forgotten district, walls thick with history and silence. Yet even here the sense of being watched was a pulse beneath her skin. A warning whispered in the silence that the war was no longer just a battle of guns and bombs, but a game of shadows and secrets where every ally could be an enemy and every truth a lie, waiting to be uncovered. Olena stepped inside, moving through rooms that smelled of dust and cold metal. The team was tense, their faces drawn with exhaustion and fear. The radios crackled faintly with fragmented messages and the constant hum of surveillance feeds. The general was placed in a reinforced room guarded by more than locks and steel, but by the knowledge that his words could shatter worlds. She moved to a console scanning intercepted communications and the strange coded signals that had haunted the mission from the start. The strange word repeated like a curse, a key to a mystery that pulled at the edges of her mind. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, piecing together fragments of language and cipher patterns, ancient and unfamiliar. Suddenly, the screen flickered, revealing a map marked with symbols that seemed to pulse with a hidden rhythm. The network was vast, spanning cities and countries, the threads of a conspiracy that reached deeper than any battlefield. Olena's breath caught as the implications settled like a weight in her chest. This was no ordinary war. This was a war for control of something older and darker than any soldier could fight. The general's voice echoed in her memory, a warning and a promise intertwined. You have no idea what you have awakened. The city was not just a battleground, but a gateway, and he was the guardian of secrets that could unravel reality itself. The team watched the monitors, their faces pale as the scope of the threat became clear. Then the power flickered and died, plunging the safe house into darkness. The hum of electronics silenced, leaving only the sound of breath and distant footsteps. The guards tightened their grip on weapons, eyes searching the shadows for threats unseen. Olena felt the cold touch of fear and the fire of resolve burning in her veins. A message appeared on the screen once power returned. A challenge in the same strange language, a summons to a place no one had dared to go. The coordinates were a beacon and a trap, a final move in a game played in silence and blood. The team prepared to move, knowing that this journey could lead to salvation or destruction as they descended into the underground tunnels beneath the city. The walls seemed to close around them, the air thick with history and the weight of secrets too heavy to bear. The general was silent, but his eyes held the stories of battles fought in shadows and the knowledge that the end was near. They reached a chamber carved from stone. Ancient and untouched, a place where the strange word resonated like a chant, woven into the very fabric of the place. The air hummed, with power and menace, as the team faced the truth hidden beneath layers of war and lies. The enemy was not just an army, but a force older than nations, older than time itself. Olena stepped forward, her heart steady despite the darkness that threatened to swallow them all. The general spoke one last time words that were both a warning and a gift. The war was far from over, but now they had a chance to change the course of history, if only they could survive the shadows that waited beyond the chamber, trembled, and the walls seemed to breathe as the ancient power stirred, awakening something that had slumbered for centuries. The strange word echoed again, a key turning in a lock, opening the path to a future written in courage and sacrifice. The team braced themselves for what was to come, knowing that the choices made in this moment would shape the fate of a world hanging by a thread. And in the silence that followed, the night held its breath, waiting for the dawn that might never come.